Hello, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar with Chatmeter, the power of reputation in the age of the consumer. My name is Erica. I am the Director of Marketing for the LSA, and I'll be your host for the event. A few housekeeping items before we begin. This webinar is being recorded and will be circulated to all attendees with the presentation within 24 hours. Questions will be answered during the Q&A session at the end. You can, however, ask questions at any time during the broadcast by using the question window in your control panel. Our speakers today are Cynthia Sener, VP of Marketing at Chatmeter. Cynthia brings nearly 25 years of local experience to Chatmeter and has a background in local SEO, product development, strategic marketing, revenue generation, and sales. Liz Basner, Senior Digital Manager at A&W. Liz leads the development of digital and social campaigns, as well as overseeing the consumer-facing website and email marketing programs. Liz is passionate about using data and technology to make decisions to drive the franchise business forward, and will demonstrate that for you today. Jared Norris, Senior Director of Operations at Chatmeter. Jared brings 12 years of experience building customer-obsessed teams and products with proven success in growing and scaling business operations for startups and pre- and post-IPOs. A big thanks to them all for participating today. Without further delay, I'll pass the mic to Cynthia to get us started.
Hello. So today what we're going to cover is a series of different things on our agenda. So we'll start with talking about the evolution of the buyer journey and how reputation fits into this and the trends of online reputation. Then Liz will step in and we'll really talk about how this is happening at A&W, so a day in the life. And then Jared will step over and talk about what brands can do to really implement this into their operational process to enhance their reputation online. And last, we will take time to make sure to address all of your questions and answers from the panel here. So don't hesitate throughout to write us questions and we'll review those and give those answers in real time as much as possible. So to start with, let's talk about the evolution of the buyer journey. You know, Forrester's come out with this whole phrase of the age of the consumer, and it really speaks to me because consumers now have the power. You know, I think back to the days of product marketing where you could really control all four of the P's, right? Of product, place, price, and promotion. But the reality is now that perception is important too. And so consumers know what they want and they don't necessarily care where they get it. They just have an urgency and a need and they want to have a positive buying experience. So the power has truly shifted to them, and the brand loyalty has really gone away in many standpoints, and that goes into the overall journey. The customer journey has changed to be entirely cyclical. It's not a one-time experience with the customer to where they've purchased from you and therefore you've earned their long-time loyalty. Your customer's experience today will influence that customer and future customers' experiences tomorrow because of the world of digital and how people are sharing through all of the stages of their journey, from discovering your brands, exploring your products and services, making that transaction, engaging with the product, engaging with your brand ongoing, and then how that loyalty builds up as they repeat the process. That is so transparent now to other consumers who are also in that buyer journey. And so reputation has never been more important than now for how that is influencing the perception and the opportunity to gain customers. Because really, to think through this, how consumers discover you now has changed. And in this example, we're taking tax, because historically, your tax guy, you kind of just went to the same person year after year. That's a market that's actually really changed now, though. The first thing a lot of consumers are doing is going to their mobile phone and searching. And so looking for tax, viewing local options in their area, looking at all the different types of services that they may offer, reading the reviews about how other people have engaged with that brand or even that person as a brand in the case sometimes of tax, comparing that to other competitors, location, business hours, how are they rating, photos about the business, what will my experience be like, is this positive? And then from there, finally making that decision to call you, to request directions, to visit your website, book an appointment. All of those things have occurred completely outside of the business's control And reputation sits at the core of several of those, along with the ways that you make sure that your business is represented online. This buyer journey really has to be at the forefront of your discussions at the C-suite, all the way down to the management level, to make sure that there is a consistent and positive experience for the consumer, because they will directly influence your future revenue. And just to keep in mind, it's not a one-time process for setup. Google is continuously changing, and as we know, Google tends to be one of the primary sources where people are looking when making a buying decision, when searching on their phone. So keep in mind just 4 of the recent changes that have occurred locally for the reputation landscape. For example, we now know that review offers higher ranking signals inside of the GMB listings. So brands need to take notice of this, because review management and engaging with those reviews, not just having a solid star rating, but actually responding to the reviews, has more value in how you rank locally. We also have seen that rich review snippets are no longer being displayed. So in your schema markup, it's important to know that that isn't impacting your online reputation the way you once thought it was. You should still show them because it's a positive signal, but everything else that you're doing for rank needs to now take a higher priority because an old strategy has gone away. We've also seen dozens of new GMB features being added in the last 2 years, posts, Q&A, all sorts of other engagement methods, which means that GMB is taking a higher ranking than ever before. And quite frankly, now we're getting to the level of personalization, which becomes so important to understand what that buying experience was, because that will influence all of your opportunities for ranking for your products and services that you offer. And one example of that is just the level of how much sophistication goes into the analysis behind reviews now. This is actually an example of our own tool, historically and now. So old school sentiment analysis, right, where you could basically say, this is a neutral perception, pizza's really good here, but the service was slow. You know, our technology at one point didn't have the sophistication to really go in and slice that apart. But now with AI, we have the ability to handle unstructured text analytics at a level that's never been experienced before. So you really can get a strong grasp of what that journey experience was. So for example, now I can take elements inside of each of these sentences and assign categories, topics, attributes, sentiment, everything to understand that slow means something different and service represents experience, and slow means negative. It also has an attribute. You can actually understand that the topic was about pizza, so they liked the pizza, but we have an experience issue around slow service. And now the business can take all of this information back to the C-suite and discuss where some of their strengths and weaknesses are as an organization, and then also how they impact that at every single location, because these things truly do represent revenue at the end of the day. And the best way we like to discuss this is actually real data from a client of what the ROI is behind reputation management. So for example, how many reviews you have across your organization is important to monitor, and what that response rate is, because that's sending a positive signal to your customers about the seriousness of your business. You can also correct and identify issues, and that will actually impact how you're seen online. That directly correlates to driving direction clicks. We know that we've seen that when people are having a positive engagement online, that more people will actually go to visit that business historically. So with that, if you're actually responding to these reviews, we see a sizable lift in those driving direction clicks. And that's the closest thing we can get to that moment of intent, right? I've looked at your business, I've evaluated it like that tax scenario, and now I'm going to actually book an appointment, or I'm going to drive to that location. So if we're seeing a lift in the driving directions, we actually know that a certain amount of those will convert to customers. And with those increased customers, if you have the average check of $50, then you would actually see a sizable increase in revenue, directly tied to people seeing your listings online, a positive reputation, and that correlating to more traffic to your store. So with that, I'd like to hand this over to Liz, because I think this is such a fascinating story. A&W being around, I personally went to A&W as a kid, which I hate to say was before Google existed. So, and now you have a strategy digitally. So Liz, I'm going to hand this off to you to tell your story.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me today. This topic has been something that in our organization we've talked about for a number of years. And in the last year and a half, we've really had a mindset shift. And our entire organization has really started to get behind this movement of listening to what your customers are saying online, helping to control your online real estate, as we call it. And so this is one of my favorite things to talk about. A little bit of background on A&W. We have been around 100 years. This is our 100th anniversary year. We were founded in 1919. We have over 1,100 locations worldwide. It's about 600 in the United States. And something else to note is that in the United States, we are 100% franchised. So we're not only coordinating this effort on behalf of the brand, but it's really mostly for us a tool that we can give our franchisees access to so that they can have more control over their own businesses. So moving on, we have been talking about this internally for a number of years. We had a lot of problems. So we, of course, being around for 100 years, had a lot of restaurants that had opened and closed, and many of those before the internet even existed. And there was a ton of misinformation on the internet. Another thing that complicates the matter is that we do have co-branded locations from when A&W was owned by a different company. So we've got about 300 locations that are actually physically in the same building as either a Long John Silver's or a KFC. We had a lot of franchisees who just are not necessarily big internet users themselves when it comes to online reviews. And so getting them educated and on board with the fact that this is something that's becoming increasingly important was difficult for us. And something that really hit home, this was kind of the turning point when we decided that we needed to stop talking about this issue and start acting upon it, was that in 2018 alone, across the United States, we had over 50,000 reviews across Google and Yelp and TripAdvisor and Facebook that were completely unresponded to just in 2018. So we knew that we needed some brand consistency, but the big thing that we kept running up against is that our organization just didn't have the resources and honestly didn't have the expertise to be able to tackle both the listings issue and certainly the reputation management portion of it as well. So the good news is in October of 2018, we onboarded with Chatmeter, and they've been a great partner. And honestly, we would not have been able to do any of this without them. So since 2018, we have had over 15,000 listings created on 40 directories, over 40 directories. And our listing accuracy went from like 40% up to 96%. The platform that we know that is still causing us some issues is Facebook. And we have just in the last couple of weeks started tackling that issue. So the most important thing for us was let's clean up Google. Let's make sure that our restaurants are listed on maps correctly. Let's clean up Yelp. And Facebook is kind of the last frontier that we're tackling. So we have had some really great progress that's happened over the last year. And I won't read the entire screen. The most exciting thing for us is that number one, on average, our star rating for our system has maintained at 4.0, which for QSRs is considered excellent and best in class. But we had a huge increase in the number of reviews that were responded to and thus in the review response rate. So we went from about 3% of our reviews being answered at any given point in time to 11%. I checked this morning, we're actually up to 12, which is exciting. So it's headed in the right direction. And all of this has been through the franchisees that we've trained to use the Chatmeter system, really embracing it and using it to interact with their guests. And we actually have a small group of franchisees now who are like response super users. They love using the platform, they love how easy it is, and they're really starting to get some operationally actionable insights from these review responses, which is really best case scenario for everybody. The other thing that it's really helped with is our search results, which is super important for us. We rebuilt our website last year, and so of course we had done a lot of investment into our owned properties, but searches are up 105% just on Google My Business. There's a 425% increase in branded searches and a 72% increase in unbranded searches. So people are thinking about A&W, people are looking for A&W, and now we're also appearing when people are looking for unbranded searches, lunch near me or burgers near me. And so, you know, the idea for us is that we want people to be able to find us so that ultimately they can get in their car, go to a restaurant and have a great experience. The other thing that's great is that we are seeing a lot more of these actions being taken. Actions are up 9%. There's a 13% increase in driving directions, which for us is a pretty good indicator that someone's intending to visit your restaurant at some point. And there's been a 41% increase in website clicks. So our web traffic this year has been great, which is awesome for us because it does let us take advantage of this beautiful system that we've built and the money that we spent to invest in a new website. And now we're actually able to drive people there through another avenue. So in terms of the operational impacts, we now have about 275 restaurant owners or managers who are responding to their own reviews on a daily basis, which is great. Our goal for this year was to get to 250 by the end of December, so we're outpacing ourselves a little bit, which is awesome. Something else that's really great is one of the programs that we have instituted in our restaurants is called the Bear Cares program. And it's basically a way that you can catch someone doing something right in the restaurant. So whenever we as corporate go out and do restaurant visits, if someone makes a perfect burger or if a drive-through attendant was just totally spot on and did a great upsell, we actually have little physical cards that we can fill out and give to them. And our restaurant owners do the same thing. So for us, now that restaurant owners know that when they see a Yelp review that mentions a manager or mentions a cashier and said, this was an awesome experience, you know, this person was great, I can't wait to come back. Our team members are actually getting Bear Care cards from the Chatmeter platform, which is just another way that's really tied what's happening in online reviews physically back to the restaurant. We're able to provide better operational support whenever we're launching a new LTO, or if we know that we have a product that's changing, we're able to keep an eye on what the sentiment is around that initiative so that we can report back to our operations team or to our marketing team, either, hey, people are loving it, it's going great, or if we notice things like, hey, there's not product available in this part of the country, maybe we need to talk to supply chain and see what's going on. Able to actually communicate directly with other users of the Chatmeter platform. And so we always joke that they're allowed to assign us homework. If a restaurant manager comes across a review that they don't know what to do with, they can tag me. And the next time I log in, I'll see that little piece of homework. So we have people who are talking to us through this platform almost on a daily basis that probably wouldn't have happened otherwise. So next steps for us, this graphic here is actually one of my favorite new features that Chatmeter rolled out. They call it their Sunburst. And it's just a deeper way to be able to analyze sentiment. The more you interact with that, the more you click on terms, the deeper you're able to go until ultimately you'll come across the language that actually they pulled that sentiment out of. We've started doing some monthly reports so that we're keeping our restaurants on track for success. We like to reward our top 10 restaurants in the system, and then look at the ones that might be struggling a bit and see what we can do to help them not only get better reviews, but really just to improve their restaurant performance. And then, of course, Google Q&A is becoming much more important, and we want to get out in front of that so that we can know and anticipate the kind of questions that our guests are going to ask, so that as the brand, we can have a chance to start and participate in those conversations, rather than letting that happen kind of out in the wild without us. So with that, I am going to hand this over to Jared from Chatmeter. He has been with us on our Chatmeter journey from the very beginning. He has been such an important part of this. And so he and his team are always our go-tos whenever we have questions to lean on them for their expertise.
Thanks very much, Liz. I can't take all the credit. You and your team, it's been great to watch. You guys have jumped all in on making some impressive strides and making this a priority to improve your online presence and reputation. So it's been great to watch the transformation of the brand digitally in the past year. So I'm going to go ahead and walk through some of our best practices that we cover with customers during our onboarding process here at Chatmeter. It's really the playbook that we expanded upon with A&W. It's a great starting point for any brand, any industry that wants to improve their online reputation. So Cynthia mentioned, customers are going online to make their decisions and do their research before deciding on where they'll spend their hard-earned money. So it really begins with making sure customers can find you online across any device, search directory, or provider site they may be using in their local search, which means you got to create your online listings, boost your presence, and once that claiming and creation process is finished, making sure all that information that exists online is accurate. That provides a consistent customer experience, and it's going to ensure the customer can reach you or visit your location once they've made that decision. It's also going to increase your search rankings, which is a great way to appear higher than your competitors in that local search. So now that you're online, customers can find those locations from their preferred review site and leave a review about that experience. So this opens up the floodgates, as Liz called out, around reviews coming into your business. So it's important to have a review response strategy built out in a solution, such as Chatmeter, that enables you to respond to these reviews at scale. So social media sites are going to also provide another channel for you to engage with your customers in a fun and personal way. So we're going to discuss some of the examples of ways to stay top of mind with your customers, but also discuss the expectations that customers will have of a business on social media, which A&W has made great strides in really leading the space in this area. So we'll call out some examples that A&W uses. Next, Q&A is a relatively new channel to engage with your customers across your Google listings. So a lot of businesses have not yet adopted a consistent process for engaging with their community in this section. So it's another great way for you to stand out from your competitors and be an early adopter. Finally, you can do everything on this slide and more to improve your reputation, but if you're not focused on providing an exceptional in-store experience and constantly trying to learn on how to improve that experience, you're running the risk of not being able to retain those customers or acquire new customers through word of mouth. So we're going to start here with customers during our onboarding process, by identifying unclaimed business pages across all those major directories like Liz called out. We're going to discuss the structure of your business and if it's being mirrored from a hierarchy perspective the right way within your business managers across Facebook and Google and other provider sites. And some of these sites are going to require different forms of verification before you're able to actually claim those business listings. So it's important to understand how much work and collaboration is going to go into this from everybody on the front lines, those store managers that need to provide documentation or be involved in the verification process. So you have to have that top-down approach, and you have to be ready to roll this out with the right process in place. So then once you have access to all those location listings, you want to focus on the core fields your customers are going to care about. Who you are, where you are, what do you do, and when can I find you, and how can I reach you if needed? Once those basics are out of the way, you should be focusing then on optimizing those listings to stand out from your competition. So a great way to do that is create high-resolution photos, maintain consistent storefront photos, and select the appropriate categories across the provider sites so your business can be found within the right search terms. If you provide services, give them the opportunity to book directly with you. Update your menu offerings, grab a reservation online if you're going to be dining in your restaurant industry. This creates an opportunity for actions to be taken on behalf of your customers. So don't give them the opportunity to leave your listing while you have them interested encourage them to take that action and get them much closer to actually providing a transaction and becoming a customer. So now you got everything built, you're online, you're found, everything's accurate. The work doesn't stop here. You know, your listings are ripe for potential data corruption. So in fact, there's actually 20 points of data on your listings that will become vulnerable. And on average, those listings could change every 5 days. So it's a constant game of whack-a-mole. That's what we call it here. And when we talk with our customers, it's why brands like A&W trust Chatmeter or another software to monitor those accuracy and those potential changes across all the locations and providers constantly. So, you know, some different avenues and vehicles that could disrupt your listings. So data aggregators are data mining systems that will spread business information online. So they're going to collect, share business data with a multitude of sources, just like Google. So if the aggregators are pushing incorrect data to your listings or suggesting edits to correct the data that you've already put out there online, you're not going to be able to reject those or override the bad data. Your accuracy will quickly deteriorate. So you need to be able to stay on top of those. You need to be able to constantly monitor all of your listings across all your providers. So next on Google, you're going to have the local guides program, which is relatively new in the sense that, you know, it's going to gamify the engagement across your Google business listings. So customers, non-customers, even your competitors can leave reviews, suggest store hour changes or other business information. They can go in and answer questions within your Q&A section. So that local guide program is going to give out points for each review that's left, any photos that are added to those reviews. If they're answering questions, they're getting points for that. If they're suggesting business edits to your listings, it's going to increase, you know, the engagement, which is a good thing. But if you don't have a way to monitor this engagement across your brand, it could be damaging. And most importantly, customers could be looking at incorrect information online. So now we're going on to review response. So customers are looking at online reviews before making a decision, as Cynthia called out in the buyer's journey. So they're going to look at reviews to decide whether or not they're to visit that business. So it's very important for businesses to listen to their customers, you know, take action on that feedback. So first, have a review response process and strategy in place. Try and respond to as many reviews as possible and as quickly as possible. That's obviously a huge undertaking, and most can't tackle everything right away. So building a crawl, walk, and run phased approach is a good place to start. For instance, you can respond to all 1-star reviews with text within 2 hours of the same day, respond to 5-star reviews with text within 48 hours, and work towards adding more as you continue to grow. So this will have a multitude of benefits. Obviously, the first is you're showing your customers, you know, who choose to spend money with your business, that you care about that experience that they're having, and that you appreciate it, or you want to do right by a poor experience. So it's also going to help reduce churn, which will then increase customers' lifetime value to your business. And customers have that expectation now that a business will respond to their review. So your competitors may be doing this, right? So, you know, it's very important as they're going through and doing a side-by-side comparison that they're seeing this business cares about their customer base. Those customers that end up hearing back from the business about a negative experience end up changing their original online review, which will increase your star rating and going to give you the opportunity to take a potential detractor or detractor and do right by them and turn them into a raving fan or promoter. So this is a great example. This is someone who probably received, you know, the Bear Cares card or handout in one of their stores. So this is a review here that was left, and it came in at an A&W restaurant in Minnesota. The review came from a gentleman named Jonathan about his experience there. So it looks like Jonathan waited all week for a Wednesday special and couldn't get it because the staff that day closed the store 15 minutes early. The store manager quickly responded to that review within the same day, apologized. He let the customer know he'd review it with their staff the next day, and he even suggested he'd review the security cameras and verify his staff closed down early that day, just like the customer indicated. He then asked for Jonathan to reach out privately with his personal email and provide his contact information, taking the conversation offline, which is very important for handling those negative reviews. You can see now that Jonathan went in and updated his original 1-star review to a 5-star review 3 days later. He goes on to say he was blown away by the professionalism, the quick response by the manager at A&W, and Jonathan even referenced how he was reached out to right away, and the manager hand-delivered a complimentary meal to his house. So you see how impressed he was with the manager keeping his word, and he goes on to say that other restaurants can learn a thing or two from A&W, which shows you now have a customer for life, whereas the other way around, if the review response didn't happen and the action didn't take place, you could have lost a customer for life. So next we move on to social media. So engaging with customers on social media presents an opportunity for brands to promote their services, products, and highlight in-store experiences to the masses. So no one in the QSR space, as I mentioned, does this better than A&W. NetBase actually ranked A&W #1 recently in the QSR magazine article for having the best social strategy out of QSR fast food restaurants. This invites a lot of A&W customers to engage with the posts that the brand's making across Twitter, Facebook, or the social media sites about National Root Beer Day, Free Mug Friday. This invites those customers to ask questions on those posts, provide more feedback with higher expectations on response times because they're constantly on social media accounts. So if you don't have a brand strategy around monitoring that feedback after you're making a lot of posts, it's not just about getting your content out there and your product out there. It's actually going in and engaging with the community and the results and the feedback that come from those posts. Customers prefer to reach out via social media instead of calling customer service or calling a business, and they expect a response quickly within an hour. If they can reach that brand, there's generally a 21% likelihood to buy from that brand versus another option. So having a way to monitor all these comments and posts on social media accounts is very important. It should be prioritized in the same vein as review response. Next, as I mentioned, participating in Google Q&A. So it's a new channel, an opportunity to interact with your customers on your GMV pages. So both national brands and small businesses have been slow to adopt Google Q&A, which is providing a very unique opportunity to outpace your competitors and control your brand online. You can also improve your voice search strategy and get out in front of FAQs that your customers may be reaching out to you directly via phone, which is obviously increasing resources and potential costs. So first, let's look at brand control. So if you're talking with your customers, you're not talking at them. So be the first to engage the questions before Google consumers would. This will maintain that brand consistency by providing a single source of truth on your Google questions. You can also utilize Google Q&A for your voice strategy. So discovering the information consumers need to make confident decisions about your business. You can utilize certain keywords and FAQs to enhance your voice strategy and grow your local search rankings. And then get out there and proactively answer questions. So, post FAQs on each of your GMV location pages. Engage with your high intent searches by providing them with information that's going to influence that path to purchase. Then finally, you built out your presence online. You engage with potential and current customers through reviews, social media, and Google Q&A. So they made their decision. They arrived at your store or restaurant. So now it's about providing that exceptional experience that's going to be consistent regardless of which location they visit. Build upon those best practices that you're learning from, and improve upon prior mistakes that you're hearing from your customers on. So that's the recipe that's going to keep customers coming back time and time again. The challenge is you can't be at 1,000 locations or restaurants at once for every customer. So how do you stay on top of all those interactions? So it's going to be important to listen to the feedback you're getting, learn from those trends. You saw Liz call out, our sentiment tool, our sunburst. You can identify those trends and make operational changes to improve based upon what your customers are telling you. So look at those common topics discussed with both positive and negative sentiment. You can stack rank those locations to identify those that are performing well in one category and those that may need support from those other location managers or store managers. To use this to reward locations, just like the Bears Cares program that are excelling in certain areas, and the areas that are most important to your business too, right? This is a great opportunity for you to be able to look at strategic initiatives and track those topics to see if customers are discussing what your C-suite or what your business really is putting a lot of resources and investment towards in a given year. And then call out those superhero employees like managers that are hand delivering complimentary meals in front of their peers and make it contagious by doing right by your customer. So to wrap things up, it's really in your hands. You have more power than ever to be able to take control of this because consumers' power is growing. So your online reputation is very vital to your success, and you should have a strategy in place around your listings management, making sure that you have, if you haven't created listings, that you have those claimed and you have access to accurate information, and you're populating that accurate information so customers can make an educated decision. You have a review management strategy in place. You don't have to go after all your reviews at once. You saw the increase that A&W took. It's going to continue to rise, and we're having more and more people into the platform, and they have a great strategy in place. It's a long-term one. You have social media management in place, so making sure that you have some sort of strategy around not just posting content online and making sure you're engaging with those fans, but you're tracking what those comments are, those other posts, and you have a similar strategy to review response on social media. And then take advantage of Google Q&A. A lot of other brands, both small and large, are not today. So make sure you're in there and answering questions as the business. So it's giving off the impression that information is accurate to your customers. And then last but not least, you're probably already providing a great in-store experience, but keep an eye on it. Keep a close eye across all locations. So that way you can make those changes at scale to provide that consistent experience to really elevate the brand and continue to have customers for life.
Okay, so with that, this is Cynthia again, and we're going to open this up to Q&A. As a reminder, you can ask any questions in the navigation panel, and we will try and go through as many of those as possible right now. And what I'll do is read the question and then maybe queue up one of the three of us as to who seems most appropriate, but obviously jump in if you have other input as well. Let's see, there's several that are already here, but please keep typing more questions as you go. A question back on the ROI. So what about phone calls? If you're a service area business, what if you're not trying to drive people into the physical location? Yes, you can absolutely, I'll take that one. You can absolutely still correlate an ROI. Depending upon what your business purpose is, you may not see driving directions as the number one. And I'm thinking about a delivery service as one of our clients that they take appointments for everything via the phone. And so they are tracking the phone call metric. And then we've worked with them to understand their conversions, because it's very easy when it's phone calls, right? Number of calls to conversions to appointments. And then we'll apply that, right? So as you start to see the lift in phone calls, because you will get more people dialing using their mobile phone, it's an easy experience, then you'll actually see that correlate into additional appointments, additional deliveries, et cetera. And they've even gotten sophisticated enough to fraction that out and say there's a certain amount that are service calls versus new business. And so over time, we can really predict that and forecast. And I will suggest too that we often do this for clients as they're considering Chatmeter services. If you want an ROI of any type, we can do that for you to help you envision the growth potential for your business. And also, while I have this on the screen, before I get to the next question, we offer a free instant brand audit at the URL that's listed there. If you want to run up to 5 locations and see just a basic snapshot of your listings, your reputation, and your rankings to get an idea of how well you're scoring today, feel free to do that as part of this webinar to gauge how your business is performing. Okay, more questions that are coming in. This one's going to go to Liz. Do you find it easier to have the store managers take care of their online reputation, or do you find better control at the corporate level? Liz, what do you think?
That's an excellent question. For us, whether it's an online review or a phone call that we get to our office, or we still get occasional handwritten letters. Being 100 years old, we have a lot of fans who still just like to write in. But it's best if the situation can be handled by someone who is directly associated with the business. So like the example that Jared had used for us is really best case scenario. Someone had an issue at a restaurant, they made it known, and then the manager and restaurant owner jumped in within 24 hours to fix that. And that really is just really the ideal situation of being able to create some of those one-on-one relationships with someone who's probably going to be a loyal guest and will like it when they go back to that location in Minnesota and see that manager working and have that memory of like, oh, he really solved my problem. Now having 600 locations, we've got kind of varying levels of participation. And so if we can't get the issue solved at the restaurant level, we as a brand will step in and say, okay, like this is something that we need to respond to protect the brand's reputation. And now it's going to be our responsibility to try and recapture that guest. But I think it's a little less impactful when someone from Kentucky is trying to fix a problem in Minnesota versus someone who is in Minnesota and can actually make that connection with the guest.
Yeah, especially in that use case that Jared showed, right? You couldn't have someone delivering something locally if you're all the way in a different state. So that definitely gives that personal element. Another question that we have here is, what about using scripts? Do you have scripts to follow for positive and negative reviews? I'm going to throw that one back to you, Liz, as well. Are you utilizing scripts? And then we can speak to some of the best practices other customers use. What are you guys doing?
We don't really have scripts per se. What we do have are best practices, and those are really a list of kind of some bullet points that we find we run into over and over again. So we'll see the same categories appear. My order was wrong, my food was too cold, someone was rude, something was dirty, my order was incorrect, or kind of the 5 categories that you'll get. So we have some examples that people can use. And one of the features that we like about Chatmeter is that there are templates that can pull in personal information, but give the restaurant manager kind of a basis to work off of, so that they're not necessarily starting from scratch every time. We do ask that they go in and actually personalize it, so they're not able to just like blindly respond by copying and pasting. They still have to have some sort of an interaction with that review and with that guest. But even at the restaurant level with our cashiers, we don't do a lot of scripting. But we do like to provide best practices, and then provide best use cases as well, and say, hey, this restaurant has been doing awesome, and they've gotten all of these positive Google reviews, and here's what they did to get those, and here's how they respond to their reviews, so that we can build some consistency that way.
And let me actually add a second question to this. And Jared, I'm going to point this one towards you, because if you don't have that availability, there's a question here as a franchisor saying it's tough to make some of those things scalable if you can't do that at the local level. Liz's example is great when you have store managers that are owning that local experience. But what if you're not? How do you have, is there a negative impact of responding to reviews with the same generic response across all locations, across all reviews? What are some strategies to make that variable?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'd say it really depends. The rule of thumb that we usually share with customers, and that we are pretty prideful and stand behind, is, make it as personable as possible, make it as relevant as possible. But you run into those challenges sometimes where you have a 1-star review with no details, no text. And the same goes for 5-star reviews without any details around why that experience was so great. So in those scenarios, it's perfectly reasonable to have some level of a template or a script asking the customer to expand upon their rating, right? So you want to try and get those details, understand why it was a positive or negative experience, and the only way to do that is to ask for the customer to provide more detail, and that could be a great opportunity to ask for that offline. Maybe in the 5-star scenario, you probably don't want to take that offline, because if it is a positive experience, they can go in and continue to revise their review or add more to their review. But that's a great opportunity, and makes up a pretty large portion of the reviews you get online, especially on Google, where there's not a requirement around some of the character limits that are or should be attached to a review left.
Good. Okay. Another question comes in about claiming listings. So how can I claim listings on Apple and Bing? And I'm assuming that there's probably the claiming listings on others. That's a fast, easy answer, and then a complicated one behind it. It depends on how many locations you have. With Apple Maps, you can, on an individual basis, claim. When you start getting into a larger volume, companies tend to rely on a service like Chatmeter in order to do things at scale. Once you get past a certain point, it's just not replicable, especially when you're trying to update each of those listings as things become larger changes, as you have people actually having content requests and challenging those listings for their credibility. So you can go in individually. We've actually got a whole series of blogs on it. If you go to chatmeter.com and go to our blog session, you can read quite a bit on how to handle your listings. If you want to do that DIY, if you want some help, by all means, fill out a demo form, and we can tell you how to do that at scale as we go through things. So another question that's coming in here is, how about the impact of rankings by leveraging Q&A, populating with keywords consumers are searching, et cetera? Are we seeing metrics on that? It's an excellent question. The truthful answer is not yet, right? We are starting to see indications, but it's too early. With the way that it's been rolled out, we have our suspicions, but it's sort of the same way with responding to reviews. We had suspicions, and now we're starting to see that our suspicions have become reality. I believe it's the same way. But here's the reality on this, is that customers are looking to Q&A for answers about the business. And I would look at it from that more than rank, but write it in a way with rank in mind, right? So if you look at your questions and say, first off, if you don't have any, create some, right? As the business, and one of the questions said, should I do this as a business or from my personal account? Do it as the business, that you are offering value by letting people know some of the frequently asked questions people want to have, but instead of calling your business, they're looking at your GMB profile. Put those, answer those, that way you give a consistent response. I saw Jared's photo earlier of Hobby Lobby, and inside the Q&A, someone asked if they offered classes, and then some local search expert is referencing Michael's. That's your nightmare story as a brand manager, right? Is that you didn't get out in front of it and post those. But when you post them, set the groundwork for knowing that these will eventually, we're confident will have an impact in rank. And so write your questions and your responses with keywords that you want to be sure are identified and recognized for your business, right? If you don't know what those are, tools like ours with Pulse that allow you to go in and understand the most common words that people are using about your business inside your reputation serves as a great foundation. But if not, you would put in the keywords you already know. So I suspect in a year and a half from now, when we start talking about this, we'll start to have some really solid data to know how much of an influence it's had. Right now, we're seeing suggestions of it, but not enough to come out with a white paper that says these are the metrics that we know are happening. Hope that's helping with that question. All right, there's a whole bunch more that have come in here while I'm talking. I should send this to someone else. Ooh, how long does it typically take to get my team responding to reviews on a daily basis? Habit changes. That's a good one. Liz, you want to share with us how that rolled out in your organization?
Sure, that's an excellent question, and it was one that I think we probably did not plan far enough ahead to factor in. Basically, what we did is, first of all, I think it's important for your organization's leadership to get behind this initiative and to really understand why it's important. And so there's fortunately now a ton of data and information available that actually equates, changes in star ratings to changes in customer frequency and changes in loyalty, which translates into dollars, which is, what everybody is very important for people. What we've done is we have just developed some people who are really, really passionate about this program, not only in our corporate office, but users, people who are on our board, who've really seen the benefit of it and have seen how easy it is and what better relationships it creates with their customers. It also is just going to take a lot of communication. We recommend for all of our Chatmeter users that they sign up for Chatmeter's blogs and for their webinars and use them as a resource. Every month, we also send out our own communication that says, hey, did you know? And it'll have like one little fact about Chatmeter just to pique their interest. We talk about it whenever we onboard new franchisees. We talk about it whenever we do boot camps. We talk about it in every quarterly meeting. And so it's really just getting people excited about it and to understand that it really is a time saver that's going to help them run their business better. But I can't tell you, if I had $1 for every time one of us mentioned Chatmeter reviews over the last few years, I probably would not be on this webinar. I'd be on an island somewhere. So it takes just a lot of consistent and constant communication.
That makes sense. It really does get into that continuous habit to build that best practice. One thing I can share too is that what we've seen with some of our clients is that if you tie those into KPIs and actually use that as a recognizing essentially the winners and losers, the rise and the fall, what some of your locations that are doing it best, using them as role models and examples tends to work well. We even have some clients that have gone as far as to monetize locations based upon how they're scoring, because they've recognized that this reputation directly correlates to revenue as they go through things. Getting a lot of questions on Google Q&A and a couple on Google Posts. So let me hit on the Q&A ones first. One question is, can you respond to Q&A directly through Chatmeter, or do you have to go out to GMB to respond to them? You can actually both respond and publish via Chatmeter. So we are tied into the API, and you can do both in that way, as well as we alert you to new questions that come up. Because that's the fear, right? Is that someone writes a question and you're not keeping track of it because you have 1,000 locations. So we have an alert system. All of those are built out that you can utilize. Other questions on Google Q&A. What are some of the best practices for getting started on Google Q&A? And should I ask the same questions on all of my listings, or is that redundant? Let's see. Jared, you want to take that one?
Sure. No, I think that, having a variety is the right approach there, right? So you want to have, some questions that may be, related to some of the, if you're in service, right? If you have warranties, if you have something along the lines that, customers are constantly calling call centers, or there's long lines in the customer service areas within your stores, getting out in front of some of those. but also having, some questions that are relevant to that individual location. So, if one location's hidden by some signs or it's hard to find, making sure that, you ask a question in a way that gets out in front of some of those potential inconveniences that, a customer could experience.
That makes sense. And then another question is more tied to Google Posts. Should our brands be doing these? I would say absolutely. It's another content element inside of your listing, and I see them almost as free ads, right? So ways to get people engaged with your brand, promote products that are for sale, promote things that are unique to that location. Make it local as much as you can. That's my one suggestion. If you have events, if you have things that are happening in that location, that is ideal. You can't publish nationally anyways, so you're gonna have to go local. You should make those have that local feel as much as possible. I'm excited to see where Google Posts go over the next few years, because that'll be a really interesting area. Essentially, every element of content in your GMB profile, you should be maximizing. If you want to have that best local experience, back to having a positive reputation, you respond to all your reviews, you make sure that you have lots of photos to show someone the experience. The average user, while they're only clicking on driving directions once, they've probably looked at 6 to 7 photos on your listing before making that buying decision. Every element goes into understanding that consumer experience for them to make a decision to work with your brand. So let's see, the rest of these questions I think we've really addressed in one way or another, except though, Liz, you have some big fans of Rudy, and someone really wants a location in North New Jersey. So just passing that along as some feedback for you as well.
Well, the good news is we are franchising. So
there you go. If someone's a big fan, they should look into franchise opportunities.
There you go.
Okay, I think that's all of our questions today. So LSA team, we're going to hand it back to you.
All right, thank you guys. Thanks, Cynthia. Great questions and discussion. Thanks so much to Chatmeter for putting together this webinar for us. That ends our webinar. If you are interested in viewing this and other previous LSA webinars, simply visit our website, thelsa.org, and navigate to insights/webinars. You'll find the archive down at the bottom. Next slide. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please be sure to visit thelsa.org and subscribe for updates to be the first to know about future webinars. Have a great day, everyone.